This binder contains a quick overview of the different malefactors that Foundation scientists and containment personnel have observed on the streets of Baltimore during our initial sweep. This does not represent the extent of our current knowledge, but provides a succinct overview for those who wish to become acquainted with our subject matter. One of our most interesting finds during the Carnate Island containment operation was a journal written by a fairly intelligent escaping inmate by the name of Clem. He had composed and illustrated a bestiary of all the malefactors he had seen, and had named them in an amusing style. Impressed by his work, we've decided to continue his naming convention herein. Slayer. This is the most pervasive of all the malefactors we've encountered. The Slayer has a basic human body shape, but with blades replacing the legs and arms and a metallic apparatus suspending the head. Given its context, the Slayer's appearance evokes blade-wielding street criminals, though the malefactors' blades are longer and sharper than one would normally find even on the most violent Baltimore streets. Arsonist. This malefactor is most curious because of its ability to survive despite being perpetually engulfed in flame. Its fire is persistent and never extinguishes for as long as its host lives. Its flesh appears to flake off as it chars, yet the malefactor seems unhurt. Baltimore has a high incidence of abandoned building fires, often with squatters and other impoverished people trapped in these run-down buildings and burned alive. If only they could survive as well as the arsonist. Gorger. Along with the Carnate Island malefactor, the Fester, this gorger is distinct because of its constant need to feed as part of its innate behavior. With its incredibly sharp teeth and highly muscled jaw, this malefactor seems built to do precisely that. This creature appears to be the incarnation of a popular Baltimore urban legend that tells of an insatiable creature that feeds on whatever it can find. Triggerman. A human corpse forms the center of this malefactor. The body appears to have suffered multiple gunshot wounds, particularly to its head, which has lost a significant portion of its mass. The malefactor's legs are vaguely arachnid in form and incorporate some type of automatic rifle. As with the Slayer, this Triggerman seems to tie to Baltimore's tragically prevalent street crime, with a high number of homicides each year resulting from gun violence. Mainliner. An offshoot of the mainliner seen on Carnate, this malefactor's appearance is evocative of the numerous junkies that one finds in Baltimore's poorest neighborhoods. Its innate behavior is to assault enemies with its syringes, suggesting that it's more of an aggressive drug dealer than a drug abuser. The syringes we have analyzed contain a unique heroin-derived concoction that is capable of instantly killing almost any human immediately upon injection. Marksman. This malefactor is nearly identical to the ones we saw in large quantities on Carnate Island. It wears a giant battery of rifles on its back and is able to erupt out of the ground, a particularly impressive sight due to its significant size. In Baltimore's troubled past, there were a few rare occasions of the military being called out to quell civilian uprisings. One can only imagine how this marksman ties to those intense events. Mauler. One of the few malefactors that does not derive from a human skeleton, these beasts do still feature a hideous human skull. Named the Mauler for their savage biting attacks, these malefactors are relentless in their pursuit of a target and seem to be insatiable in their appetite for human flesh. Their appearance often coincides with the manifestation of an apparition, a large human who seems to be their master. Burrower. Cities are built on the backs of those who labored and died to build their underground infrastructure, just as those laborers needed to adapt to their hostile working conditions. So too has this burrower. This malefactor actually moves beneath the surface of the earth at tremendous speed. The exact physics of how it accomplishes this remain a mystery, especially given that it can successfully tunnel through a wide variety of materials. Suppressor. The suppressor is surprisingly mobile, given that it's missing a number of its limbs and seems to have lost some of its senses. This malefactor can only see enemies when they step into its intense beam of light, but it is relentless once it's spotted a target. Given its appearance and its tendency to show up near Eastern Baltimore Correctional, it seems to be connected to that institution's infamous and brutal Correctional Emergency Response Team, CERT. Isolationist. This malefactor thrives in the darkness and tries to make its environment as dark as possible by disabling or destroying light sources. We've not been able to get a good look at the isolationist, let alone capture one. It appears to have a unique relationship with a cockroach-like malefactor, the Wretch, which it spawns in large numbers. One cannot help but think of inmates locked away in solitary when one glimpses the isolationist. The Horde. By far, this is the largest malefactor that we have witnessed. It is unclear to us if the Horde is unique or if we have simply never seen more than one at a time. It seems like a distant, much larger cousin to the Burrower, but obviously more deadly and destructive. This gigantic malefactor appears to have countless small animal heads sprouting from its body, evoking a mob or horde come to visit their uncontrollable anger upon the unwary.
Scrapbook history of Carnate Island, I wanted something a bit less depressing to take on next. I thought our state's largest city might be an interesting subject, and spend a large portion of my time off the island delving into the history of Baltimore. I cherished my time away from Carnate, but I soon found that Charm City had its own share of dark events from the past. And now I wonder, is it me? Do I seek out these horrible tragedies when I investigate the history of a place? Has Carnate changed me to be fixated on death and horrible suffering? Or is the evil everywhere, if you look hard enough? Baltimore Harbor. Baltimore owes its existence to its geography. It was a major port for the clipper ships of the 18th century, and to this day is a major shipping center on the eastern seaboard. The shipping industry certainly has its seedy side, with criminals and corruptions infesting it in the past and still today. With numerous underused and abandoned facilities, if you ask a resident of Baltimore what exactly the city's docks are used for, likely they would not be able to tell you. Canal Street Mission. One of Baltimore's most tragic stories takes place during the Great Depression. In the 1930s, there was a reverend who, when his soup kitchen ran bare, served up human corpses to his starving followers. This is tied to a persistent urban legend about a creature known as the Gorger. During the food shortages, mothers would tell their children that the Gorger had eaten all of their food, and if they did not behave, he might soon eat them as well. The tunnels. As with any major city of a certain age, beneath Baltimore there are more tunnels than any one person can remember. The working conditions endured while these passages were built were unsafe and often deadly. But immigrant labor, typically from Ireland, had no choice but to engage in these hazardous jobs if they wanted work. People say you can still hear their voices, trapped under the ground, desperately screaming out their last breaths. An old station. A slave state, Maryland sat on the border between the slave-holding South and the free North. Because of this, the state hosted numerous important stations on the Underground Railroad. It was at one of these safe havens in Baltimore that the slave hunter site of a lynching. Eastern Baltimore Correctional Facility. Eastern Correctional Lunchroom. Eastern Correctional Solitary Confinement Unit. Eastern Correctional Machine Shop. The Legend of the Creeper. Carnate Island. Blackmore's drowning pool.
I never threw any of it out. Some of my girlfriends now, they get mad at their boyfriend or husband or whoever. They throw away everything that reminds them of him. Burn it up, tear it to pieces, whatever. As mad as I got at T, I never threw out any of the things that made me remember him. Part of me wanted to forget he ever happened. But another part of me wouldn't let go of the hope that it would all work out in the end. Corey and Malcolm mean everything to me. And it's because of them I get so mad at T. I just want what's best for them, and sometimes I don't know if their father realizes how important he is to their happiness. But T's been doing a good job with them since I moved to Manhattan. Now I miss them more than I ever imagined. And I know I have to be with them again. And if that means taking T back, well, stranger things have happened. Miles is probably T's best friend. He's smart, and I think he has good intentions, but he always seems to be getting into trouble and bringing T down with him. He owns a dive bar called the Underground, and that was where T got into that fight that sent him to jail. I always wondered what part Miles played in all that. I tried so hard to keep T away from influences that would bring us down, but I didn't have much luck. I remember the smell of Eastern even from the outside. It seemed like forever they kept us waiting outside in the rain. Standing there, seeing the other women visiting their men. I just got mad. How could T have brought us this low? When I got inside, it was so cold. I remember the look on T's face when I told him it was over, that I needed a divorce. He looked at me like I had betrayed him. And I told him he had done it to all. The Garvey Children's Home sounds so innocent, but I think it was filled with little monsters. T never told me much about this place, but I learned about it when he would wake up screaming at night. Blackmore. I hate even writing his name down. Now I know it was him. Whether T... The gazebo is where T and I met, and I know it's silly, but just looking at a photo of it makes me wonder. What if that gazebo had been somewhere else? Somewhere far from Baltimore, far from the junkies, far from Blackmore? What if it had been in some small town somewhere out in the country? A million years ago. We would have stepped out of that gazebo into a world that would have let us have our life.